His mistress laughed at his pregnant wife's clothes. A year later, the millionaire bought the fashion company. Have you ever wondered what twists of fate might lie hidden in the ordinary moments of our lives? In this riveting real-life drama, a seemingly perfect marriage unravels when a brazen mistress mocks a pregnant wife's simple clothes only for destiny to take an astonishing turn a year later. Prepare for a tale of high-stakes, betrayal, quiet resilience, and the remarkable comeuppance that left even industry insiders stunned. This story is more than just a lesson about karma. It's a testament to how unwavering strength can triumph over the cruelest of betrayals. Stay tuned for an unforgettable journey filled with love, deception, and shocking revenge. Sophia Lewis-Patterson was never the type to hog the spotlight. In her early 30s, she boasted a quiet confidence and radiant kindness that captured people's hearts more effectively than any flashy entrance. She worked as an elementary school teacher in the suburbs of Los Angeles, an ordinary life by most measures, yet happy in its own sweet simplicity. Married to Henry Patterson, a mid-level executive at a fast-growing tech startup, Sophia believed their life was set on a smooth, predictable course. For years, Henry had nurtured ambitions far grander than Sophia suspected. While she was content with a modest lifestyle, dates at local restaurants, cozy nights in with Netflix, and occasional weekend getaways, Henry dreamed of something else, rubbing elbows with the wealthy elite, luxury weekends in San Francisco, and forging connections with venture capitalists who would someday invest in his wild ideas. He saw himself as a future mogul, a name that might appear alongside the likes of Mark Zuckerberg or Bernard Arnault. Their marriage had been stable, if not always passionate, until the day Sophia discovered she was pregnant. In the beginning, Henry was thrilled, or so Sophia believed. She thought a baby would bring them closer. After all, friends and family had assured her that a child could transform a marriage into something richer, deeper, and more meaningful. So she envisioned a cozy future, baby strollers, family dinners, matching pajamas for holiday photos. Yet beneath the surface, Henry grew restless. The looming responsibilities of fatherhood weighed on him, clashing with the lifestyle of lavish parties and social climbing he'd been privately pursuing. He didn't want to be tied down to a mortgage in the suburbs or a minivan in the driveway. This was not the life he'd planned. When a promotional opportunity at his tech firm came up, Henry found himself thrust into a more frenetic world, a swirl of investor cocktails, dinner galas, and international conferences. Unbeknownst to Sophia, Henry began enjoying the flirtatious attention of several women at these social events. His ring often tucked away or his finger discreetly absent from the conversation, he felt a surge of confidence that he didn't experience at home anymore. At first, it was harmless banter or so, he told himself. Then it grew into whispered phone calls at odd hours, hidden text messages, and a mind that wandered far from the child growing in Sophia's womb. Meanwhile, Sophia's pregnancy progressed. She found comfort in teaching her third-grade class, where her students noticed the subtle glow in her cheeks. Principal Jill Horowitz, someone who had once worked with famous philanthropic organizations, led by people like Oprah Winfrey, took particular pride in how dedicated Sophia remained, even as her belly swelled. These were the happiest, yet also the most emotionally confusing days of Sophia's life. She sensed Henry's distance. The more she tried to reach out, the more he pulled away. Caught between her maternal instincts and her desire to keep the marriage intact, Sophia refused to pry. She convinced herself that Henry's attitude was merely work stress. She believed it would pass. After all, she had always known him to be ambitious. But ambition, unfortunately, has a talent for overshadowing love if nurtured in the wrong environment. And Henry had found exactly that environment in the glitzy social circle he was now frequenting. Little did Sophia know that in just a few months, her entire world would come crashing down, all because of a single, humiliating moment that would change the course of her life forever. Bianca Rossi was an emerging star in the fashion world, or so she liked to boast. She was no household name like Anna Wintour, nor did she have the global influence of a designer like Donatella Versace, but she floated on the fringes of that glamorous circle. She'd built a modest following on Instagram by flaunting designer handbags and traveling to exotic locales. Bianca had a knack for dropping the right names and showing up at the right parties, ensuring that high society took notice of her impeccable style and razor-sharp wit. Henry first met Bianca at a launch party for a high-end tech product. He was there to represent his company, but Bianca, a fashion consultant, seemed more interested in the wealthy men roaming the room than the products on display. She zeroed in on Henry almost immediately. With her slinky cocktail dress, towering heels, and bright red lipstick, she exuded an effortless confidence that made Henry momentarily forget about the ring in his pocket and the baby at home. They exchanged small talk at the bar, Henry boasting about his company's growth and the investments they were courting, Bianca hinting at her collaborations with up-and-coming designers. She claimed she was good friends with Kylie Jenner, though in reality, she'd only once managed to snap a selfie with Kylie at a crowded La event. What she lacked in genuine connections, she made up for with a cunning ability to present illusions of grandeur. Over the next few weeks, Henry and Bianca started meeting in secret. Bianca was every bit the whirlwind of glamour that Henry craved. She introduced him to exclusive parties, invited him along to sample sales where one could snag a Fendi bag at a fraction of retail price, and whispered sweet nothings in his ear about the unstoppable success she believed him destined for. Henry, starved for validation, fell headlong into this affair without considering the emotional wreckage it would leave at home. Whenever Henry would return late at night smelling of expensive perfume, Sophia's stomach knotted. She worried that something was amiss, but Henry always had an excuse. Work meeting, client dinner. "You should rest," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "You're pregnant. I don't want you stressing out." She complied, trusting him because trust was all she had ever known in her relationship. But as Sophia's belly grew, Bianca's demands on Henry's time grew too. She nagged him to show her off in public, to come to her events, to dine at upscale restaurants. Henry, however, was reluctant to appear openly attached to Bianca, fearing gossip would spill into his professional life. Bianca, desperate for more attention, invited Henry to a runway show featuring an emerging designer that she claimed was on the verge of blowing up. It would be a perfect chance for Henry to expand his network, Bianca insisted. Henry agreed to attend, but only if he could bring a friend from the tech world to legitimize his presence. He didn't mention Sophia at all. He was terrified that if Bianca found out he was married and soon to be a father, the drama might drive her away. But ironically, it was Bianca's own arrogance that would expose Henry's double life in the most humiliating fashion, quite literally. The day of the fashion show arrived, a bright Sunday afternoon on Melrose Avenue. The designer was hosting the show in a repurposed warehouse with graffiti-splashed walls, blending edgy street art with high fashion. Models strutted in avant-garde outfits while music pounded through the loudspeakers. Henry felt out of place and electrified all at once. This was Bianca's turf, glamorous, chaotic, and full of fleeting opportunities to impress the right people. Bianca had insisted on wearing a figure-hugging black dress with diamond-studded accessories that glinted whenever the spotlight found her. She'd introduced Henry to various designers, stylists, and social media influencers, flaunting him as a promising tech genius. Henry basked in the flattering introductions. For a moment, he felt unstoppable. It was here, amid the swirl of champagne and camera flashes, that Henry's two worlds collided. Sophia, who had heard from a mutual friend that Henry might be at this event, decided against her better judgment to surprise her husband. She thought perhaps if she dressed up nicely and showed support for Henry's new social circle, it might bring them closer. So she slipped into the best outfit she could comfortably wear while pregnant. A loose-fitting maternity dress she'd found on sale at a local department store. It wasn't Chanel or Dolce & Gabbana, but it was the best she could afford, and it made her feel confident enough to step into a world she'd never known. When Sophia arrived, the show was in full swing. She navigated the crowd, looking for Henry. Eventually, she spotted him standing next to a stunning woman she immediately recognized from Instagram, Bianca Rossi. The two of them looked far more intimate than mere acquaintances. Confused and anxious, Sophia approached. At first, Henry froze. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape. Bianca, clueless about who Sophia was, offered a polite smile. That smile evaporated when Henry hesitantly introduced his visibly pregnant wife, stumbling over his words. Bianca blinked in shock. Her gaze drifted condescendingly down to Sophia's discount maternity dress, plain, floral printed cotton that clung to Sophia's expanded belly. Unable to contain her scorn, Bianca let out a derisive laugh. "Oh, so this is your wife," she drawled, her tone dripping with irony. "I didn't realize you were married. And pregnant too. Interesting choice of outfit, sweetie." Her laughter was sharp, echoing above the music. Heads turned. People around them paused to watch the exchange. Sophia felt the heat of humiliation rise from her stomach to her cheeks. Tears stung her eyes, but she tried to maintain composure. Henry, caught between horror and guilt, mumbled something about needing to talk in private, but the damage was done. Dozens of eyes had witnessed this excruciating moment. The runway lights seemed to spotlight Sophia's heartbreak, magnifying it for everyone to see. At that moment, Sophia realized that not only was her husband having an affair, but also that this mistress was mocking her for the simplest of things, her clothes, which symbolized her entire identity at that moment, a practical mother-to-be. Mortified, Sophia turned on her heel and hurried out, tears streaming. She didn't wait for Henry to follow. In a single scathing laugh, Bianca had stripped away all illusions of marital security. That laughter would echo in Sophia's mind long after she left the venue, fueling a transformation that would eventually shock even the cruelest skeptics. The aftermath of that humiliating encounter was immediate and painful. Sophia spent the next week in emotional limbo, replaying the scene over and over in her head: the unforgiving lights, Bianca's mocking smile, Henry's disloyalty. She could barely eat, her stomach roiling with anxiety and heartbreak, but she forced herself to be calm for the baby's sake. At least at school, her students and colleagues offered a sense of normalcy. Principal Horowitz, noticing Sophia's distress, encouraged her to take a few days off, but Sophia insisted on staying, finding solace in her students' bright faces. Henry's apologies flooded her phone in text messages and voicemails. He tried to come home earlier, attempted to look remorseful, but it was too late. Even if his tears were genuine, Sophia couldn't unhear Bianca's scornful laugh or the unspoken truth that Henry was living a double life. Sophia allowed Henry to stay in the house for the sake of practicality. She was too pregnant to manage an abrupt separation on her own, but she made it clear she wanted emotional distance. In a moment of desperation, Henry agreed to end things with Bianca. He blocked her number, or so he said, yet deep down, Sophia felt the severed trust might never be restored. She contemplated every path, from moving to a different city to filing for divorce as soon as the baby arrived. But there was a gentle part of her still hoping, however foolishly, that Henry might change. The tension at home grew unbearable. Dinner was a silent affair, with Sophia focusing on her meal and Henry occasionally looking up, searching for any sign of forgiveness. Sometimes he'd sigh and say, "I'm sorry, Soph," but the words rang hollow. In bed, they slept with their backs turned. Meanwhile, Henry's phone pinged occasionally with messages from unfamiliar numbers. Sophia didn't ask. She was too exhausted to fight. One night, after Henry had gone to bed, Sophia found herself awake, staring at the ceiling. She recalled Bianca's haughty expression, that derisive laughter that cut to her core. Her entire identity felt reduced to the frumpy, pregnant wife. She realized her own vulnerability. She'd let Henry's ambitions overshadow her own sense of self. She was no fashion icon, but that didn't give anyone the right to mock her. The more she thought about it, the more she felt a rising indignation at the humiliation, not just the affair. The next day, she opened her laptop and began researching. She learned about maternity fashion lines, about the behind-the-scenes workings of apparel companies. She even discovered how smaller brands sometimes went bankrupt or got bought out. The spark of an idea began to form. She hadn't the faintest clue how to start a business, let alone break into fashion. But she had one big advantage. She knew she had the empathy and passion to create something for women in her situation, mothers, pregnant women, or anyone who simply wanted affordable comfort without scorn. Days turned into weeks, and her baby bump continued to grow. Henry continued to drown in guilt, uncertain how to mend the chasm he'd created. But Sophia's mind was already leaving him behind, quietly forging a future in which she could reclaim her dignity. She had no illusions this journey would be easy or quick. Still, something in her heart told her that change, real, transformative change, was within reach. Sophia didn't know it yet, but this was the seed of her eventual triumph, a quiet rebellion that would soon echo far beyond the four walls of their troubled home. Sophia went into labor on a crisp winter morning. The drive to the hospital was tense, with Henry behind the wheel and Sophia breathing through contractions in the passenger seat. Fear mingled with hope in her mind. She worried about the baby's health, about how different life would be, and whether Henry's presence meant they might still salvage some semblance of family. After a long night of labor, Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Amelia. For a fleeting moment in the hospital room, the sight of Amelia's bright eyes and tiny fingers brought Henry and Sophia together in a shared sense of wonder. They wept tears of joy, forgetting the betrayal that loomed over them. It was a small pocket of pure love, a momentary truce in a war of heartbreak and distrust. Once they brought Amelia home, reality reasserted itself. Sleepless nights took their toll. Henry tried to help with midnight feedings, but the tension between them remained. Sophia was exhausted physically, emotionally, spiritually. Still, in the quiet hours of the night cradling Amelia, she couldn't stop thinking about her research on maternity fashion. She even jotted down ideas in a small notebook whenever Amelia dozed off. The more she read, the more she recognized a glaring gap in the market. Stylish, budget-friendly clothes for pregnant women who wanted to feel confident but didn't have the budget for designer labels. On a whim, she reached out to a local seamstress named Helen Cooper, an elderly woman who had once worked for famed designers in her youth, including an internship with the legendary Diane von Furstenberg. Helen had settled into a humble life, crafting custom dresses for local brides. She and Sophia connected immediately over tea in Helen's small studio. Sophia shared her vision, flipping through the sketches she'd made, though she was hardly a professional designer. Helen, surprisingly enthusiastic, agreed to stitch together a few prototype pieces if Sophia could provide fabrics. It felt surreal to see her simple pencil sketches come to life in actual garments. When Sophia tried them on, still wearing her post-pregnancy belly, she felt a renewed sense of self. The clothes, while basic, fit well and looked elegant. Even Henry remarked, "You look nice," in a surprisingly gentle tone. Buoyed by this small success, Sophia pushed further. She used her savings, originally set aside for a small family vacation that no longer seemed feasible, to purchase more fabric. Over the next few months, in between nursing Amelia and teaching classes at the elementary school, Sophia worked on designing a small line of comfortable but chic maternity dresses. Helen and a handful of other local seamstresses helped assemble them. Before Sophia knew it, she had a mini collection ready for a local artisan fair. Sophia showcased her designs under the label Amelia and Company, a tribute to her daughter and the hope she represented. The response at the fair was modest yet heartening. Several pregnant women stopped by her booth, delighted to find stylish pieces at reasonable prices. Word spread slowly but steadily. Even a local boutique owner expressed interest in stocking Sophia's line. Amid this quiet progress, Henry remained distant, grappling with his own guilt and confusion about the future. But for the first time since her pregnancy began, Sophia felt an empowering sense of possibility, a silent confidence that perhaps she did not need Henry's validation or the approval of some high society circle. She could forge her own path, one stitch at a time. The turning point came a few months later when Sophia received an unexpected phone call from a figure she never expected to speak to again, Caroline Hart, a well-known fashion columnist who sometimes featured local talents in her blog. Caroline was no Anna Wintour, but she held significant sway in certain West Coast-style circles. She'd gotten Sophia's number from the boutique owner, who was now carrying the Amelia and Company line. Caroline's voice crackled through the phone, brimming with curiosity. "I heard you're doing something new with maternity wear," she said. "Is it true you're a full-time teacher who's basically taught herself how to design clothes? I'd love to learn more. Might make a fascinating story for my readers." A whirlwind followed. Caroline visited Sophia's makeshift studio, a corner of her living room, where fabrics hung on cheap plastic racks. Amelia, now a few months old, cooed in a bassinet nearby, while Sophia and Caroline discussed designs. Intrigued, Caroline tried on a few pieces. Though not pregnant, she appreciated how the clothes managed to flatter a range of body types. "Your aesthetic is so refreshingly unpretentious," Caroline mused, jotting notes in her phone. "But you have to figure out how to scale. If you want to compete with big brands, you'll need a bigger operation and, frankly, a more sophisticated marketing strategy." Sophia swallowed, thinking about her meager savings and the responsibilities of her teaching job. "I'm open to advice," she admitted. "I just don't know where to start." Caroline leaned forward, a sly grin on her face. "I have connections. I can introduce you to a friend of mine, Marcus Lee, a venture capitalist who's also dabbling in fashion tech. He might be interested in investing if he sees the potential, but you have to prove you're serious. Show him your business plan, your growth strategy, maybe a pitch deck with some numbers." The words venture capitalist brought a jolt of recognition. That was Henry's world. Panic flitted through Sophia at the idea of stepping into those circles again. But her pride and a growing sense of determination refused to let that fear take root. If anything, maybe it was poetic justice that the same environment Henry had sought for his own ambitions could now offer her a step up. And so began Sophia's late-night crash course in entrepreneurship. She read business articles, watched YouTube tutorials on creating pitch decks, and studied examples of successful small fashion brands. She discovered how some had been acquired by larger companies or had used crowdfunding to build a niche following. Through it all, Caroline provided guidance, connecting Sophia to people who understood the intricacies of the fashion world and the logistics of scaling a brand. One day, Henry walked into the living room to find Sophia hunched over her laptop at 2am, diagrams and business notes scattered around her. He blinked in surprise, realizing how serious she was about this project. "You're really doing this," he said quietly. Sophia looked up. She didn't scowl or smile. Her voice was calm, but filled with an undercurrent of resolute fire. I want to make something of my own, and I won't let anyone belittle me again. Henry nodded, his eyes flickering with something like shame and maybe a tinge of awe. He offered no words of encouragement, but he also didn't stand in her way. For now, that was enough. Thus, with an unlikely mentor in Caroline Hart and a newborn fueling her every step, Sophia's journey into the fashion industry began in earnest. And unbeknownst to both Henry and Bianca, it was a journey that would soon shake the foundations of the very social circles they held in such high esteem. Caroline made good on her promise. She arranged for Sophia to present her fledgling brand to Marcus Lee and a small group of investors at an informal gathering in Beverly Hills. The event, held at a minimalist penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooked the shimmering sprawl of Los Angeles. Women in sharp blazers and men in tailored suits mingled over canapes, discussing everything from cryptocurrency to eco-friendly textiles. As Sophia entered, cradling a garment bag with a few of her best pieces, she couldn't help but recall that humiliating day of the fashion show. The glitz, the designer outfits, the sense of belonging only if you had the right credentials. It was all so alien. Yet this time she felt a quiet confidence. She'd poured her soul into Amelia and company. She believed in the mission of giving pregnant women more options beyond the overpriced or dowdy, and she had a plan. Caroline introduced Sophia to Marcus Lee, a bespectacled man in his 40s who exuded a calm but keen intensity. Sophia delivered her practiced pitch, highlighting the gap in the market, her initial sales at the local boutique, and her vision for expanding into online retail. She also showed him a brief projection of potential profit margins and growth. Marcus listened intently, occasionally tapping notes into his tablet. "Your story is compelling," he said. "I like investing in underdogs who disrupt a market, but I'll need to see more detailed figures, and you'll need a stronger marketing approach. Are you open to a partnership?" Sophia's stomach flipped with excitement. She responded earnestly, "I'm open to anything that helps Amelia and company grow while staying true to its core mission." Marcus nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "We can talk further. Let's schedule a follow-up." Before the night ended, Sophia navigated the crowd to find Caroline, eager to share the good news. As she passed through the throng, she froze. Standing near a marble table was none other than Bianca Rossi, flanked by two wealthy older men. Bianca wore a designer jumpsuit and sipped champagne as she laughed about something one of the men said. Sophia's pulse quickened. She considered ducking away, but then Bianca locked eyes with her. Confusion flitted across Bianca's face, quickly replaced by recognition. For a split second, it seemed Bianca might pretend not to know her. But curiosity got the better of her. She sauntered over, her hips swaying. "Well, well," Bianca drawled. "Look who's here." "Didn't expect to see you, Sophia," mixing with the big names. "I see you're dressed better this time." She cast a quick glance at Sophia's outfit, a sleek black dress from her own line, discreetly tailored to fit her postpartum figure. Sophia refused to cower. "Hello, Bianca," she said evenly. "I'm here on business, actually, pitching my maternity wear line. It's called Amelia and Company. You might have heard of it soon enough." She let the implied challenge hang in the air. Bianca's eyes narrowed, a flicker of disdain crossing her features. "You're full of surprises," she said before tossing back her champagne. "I suppose I'll see you around." Her tone was dismissive, but the tension was electric. Sophia watched Bianca retreat, a swirl of designer perfume trailing behind her. The memory of Bianca's mocking laughter still stung, but Sophia felt a surge of vindication. She had stood up for herself, showing Bianca she was neither defeated nor defined by that infamous insult. If only either of them had known how their destinies would intertwine again, and that the next encounter would be far more explosive. In the months that followed, Sophia's world transformed at a breakneck pace. Marcus Lee decided to invest a modest sum to bolster Amelia and company's online presence and help refine the product line. With that funding, Sophia hired a small team, a marketing specialist, a social media manager, and a dedicated production coordinator to work with local seamstresses. Although the operation remained humble, it now had structure and expert guidance. Caroline Hart penned a glowing feature about Amelia and company in her fashion column. Titled From Classroom to Catwalk, One Mother's Journey, it highlighted Sophia's struggles and the brand's promise. Orders began pouring in online, and soon talk of Amelia and company reached beyond California. They started shipping garments nationwide. Pregnant women from New York to Texas shared selfies in Amelia and company outfits, praising the comfort and elegance. On Instagram, a grassroots community was forming, with followers actively rooting for Sophia's success. While the business blossomed, Sophia's personal life remained complicated. She and Henry coexisted under the same roof, co-parenting baby Amelia. Henry, seeing Sophia's star rising, appeared torn between envy and residual guilt. Though he occasionally tried to offer business advice, usually about attracting more investors, Sophia often brushed it aside. She'd learned the hard way that Henry's ambitions served him first and foremost. Yet, as the money started coming in, Henry couldn't help but be impressed. So were his colleagues in the tech world, some of whom had once laughed off Sophia's little project. Now, seeing coverage in various fashion blogs and magazines, they realized she was onto something. Henry found himself in an odd position. His wife was becoming a success story, one with clout in circles he once craved acceptance from. The real coup came when the buyer from a well-known department store reached out. She'd seen a piece about Sophia's line in a parenting magazine and was interested in placing a large order for their maternity section. It was a dream deal for any emerging brand. If the partnership went through, Amelia and company would become a recognized name in mainstream retail. Still, the buyer wanted to see a bigger collection, including some postpartum-friendly outfits and nursing tops, a bold expansion that required more financing and production capacity. Sophia found herself at a crossroads: accept the buyer's challenge, scale up fast, or risk missing a golden opportunity. Marcus was on board, but demanded a clear plan. The next step was to set up meetings with bigger investors. She'd need more capital to ensure they could fulfill the department store's requirements without sacrificing quality. In the midst of these negotiations, Caroline brought an unexpected piece of news. One of the fashion companies rumored to be struggling was Mandalay Couture, a regional firm known for high-end designs and occasional celebrity endorsements. They had branched into maternity wear a few years back, but hadn't found success. Word on the street was that Mandalay was hemorrhaging money and might look for a buyout. Sophia felt her heart flutter. Mandalay Couture had once collaborated with notable names, including an event with Gigi Hadid. If Amelia and company could acquire Mandalay, absorb their assets, possibly their design team, then combine that with Sophia's new mainstream deals, it could be a massive leap forward. But it also carried huge risk. She'd never orchestrated a corporate acquisition in her life. Nonetheless, the seed was planted. Sophia, once mocked for her cheap maternity clothes, was now in a position to potentially buy a recognized brand. The irony and poetic justice was not lost on her. She wondered if Bianca, who prided herself on rubbing elbows with all the right fashion players, would ever see this coming. Sophia's negotiation with Mandalay Couture began quietly. Through Caroline's connections, she was introduced to the CFO, who confirmed the company's dire financial state. They were on the hunt for a lifeline, and while they were initially skeptical about partnering with a smaller brand, Sophia's investor backing and rising clout made them consider the possibility more seriously. A combined Amelia and company Mandely brand could potentially cater to both high-end and affordable segments, bridging an unusual but potentially profitable gap in the market. Simultaneously, Caroline recommended a corporate lawyer named Vanessa Burke, who had worked with many startups and established designers alike, including Rihanna's early Fenty ventures. Vanessa guided Sophia through the legal intricacies of mergers and acquisitions, drafting preliminary offers and analyzing Mandely's finances. The more Sophia learned, the more daunting the task seemed, but something in her refused to back down. The memory of Bianca's humiliating laugh still lingered like a ghost. One evening, after putting Amelia to bed, Sophia was reviewing acquisition documents when her phone buzzed. It was Henry, who was out at a networking dinner. She hesitated, still not fully trusting him, but answered anyway. "I ran into Bianca tonight," Henry said abruptly, his voice breathy with nerves. "She's apparently doing consulting work for Mandely Couture, helping them rebrand or something." He exhaled. "She mentioned she heard rumors of an upcoming buyout." "I didn't say anything, but, Soph, it looks like you two might end up crossing paths again, especially if you go through with acquiring Mandely." Sophia's heart pounded. She'd avoided direct confrontation with Bianca since that night at the investor event. Now, the woman who had mocked her was poised to become part of the company Sophia intended to buy. "Thanks for the heads up," she said coolly. "I'll handle it." And handle it she did. At the next meeting with Mandely's board, Bianca Rossi was in attendance, listed as an independent consultant. She walked into the conference room at a downtown La high-rise, wearing a crisp white blazer and designer stilettos, her expression immediately souring upon seeing Sophia. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The tension was palpable as the men and women around the table exchanged curious glances. Bianca, regaining composure, plastered on a professional smile. "Good afternoon, everyone," she greeted. Turning to Sophia, she said in an almost sugary tone, "Sophia, how interesting to meet again under these circumstances." Sophia met her gaze without flinching. "Yes, quite the turn of events," she replied, smiling back. "Shall we begin?" The meeting was a roller coaster of proposals, negotiations, and strategic talk. Mandely's executives were eager to see the specifics of Amelia and company's plans for expansion. Sophia maintained her composure throughout, carefully outlining how she envisioned the merged brand capturing both luxury and affordable segments of the maternity market. Bianca, seated at the far end of the table, asked pointed questions, clearly probing for weaknesses, but Sophia had done her homework. With Vanessa Burke at her side, she responded to every inquiry with calm precision. Still, Bianca radiated hostility. Once the meeting concluded, she cornered Sophia in the hallway. "I don't know what your angle is," she hissed, "but don't think for a second I'm going to let you waltz in and ruin everything I've worked for at Mandely." Sophia regarded Bianca's perfectly made-up face, recalling how once upon a time she'd been intimidated by such a woman, but she no longer feared the sneers or the cruelty. In a measured tone, she said, "I'm not here to ruin anything, Bianca. I'm here to do business. If your contributions to Mandely are valuable, then your role should remain secure. But if you think insulting me again will scare me off, you've severely underestimated me." She turned and walked away, heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. A wave of triumph swept over her as she left Bianca standing there, speechless. And so, the stage was set for a final showdown between two women whose lives had become inextricably entangled. The acquisition was on the horizon, and the next few weeks would determine the fate of Mandely Couture and whether Sophia would finally get the justice she deserved. Negotiations for the Mandely Couture acquisition escalated quickly. Marcus Lee helped secure additional funding, seeing the merger as a strategic power move that could catapult Amelia and company onto the international stage. The plan was bold: maintain the Mandalay name for high-end lines, while integrating Amelia and Company as its more affordable sister brand. Together, they could cover the entire spectrum of maternity fashion luxury runway pieces to everyday essentials. Caroline Hart wrote a series of updates in her column, fueling public interest. She framed it as a classic underdog story: an elementary school teacher turned fashion entrepreneur poised to take over a struggling couture house. Bloggers and influencers picked up the narrative, generating even more buzz. Pre-orders surged for the existing Amelia and Company line. At the same time, rumors swirled about Mandalay's dire financial state, with some industry experts openly skeptical that even a promising upstart like Amelia and Company could save it. In the thick of it all, Sophia hardly had time to sleep. Between her teaching responsibilities, raising Amelia, and negotiating the acquisition, she was perpetually on the brink of exhaustion. Principal Horowitz showed great compassion, offering extended leave if Sophia needed it. But Sophia clung to her teaching job, finding solace in the routine and the students who didn't care about corporate deals or vengeful mistresses. Meanwhile, Henry hovered at the edges. He occasionally offered to watch Amelia so Sophia could attend late-night meetings, a gesture she accepted for practicality's sake. Their relationship remained strained. They hadn't slept in the same bed for months. But now, even Henry began to see that Sophia's ambition matched, if not surpassed, his own. In some ways, he admired her newfound strength. Still, his guilt lingered. Sometimes he caught Sophia in quiet moments, feeding Amelia in the nursery or reviewing financial documents, and he wished he could rewind time. Finally, the big day arrived, the official signing of the acquisition contract. The ceremony was set for a morning in a downtown law office, a modest affair with just the essential parties present. Mandalay's CFO and board members, Sophia and her lawyer Vanessa, and Marcus Lee. Bianca, in her role as a consultant, was conspicuously absent from the official signatories but was hovering around. She paced in the corridor, occasionally shooting icy glares through the glass walls. The formalities took hours, with each page scrutinized, initialed, and stamped. When the last signature was penned, the CFO shook Sophia's hand. "Congratulations," he said with genuine relief. "Welcome to Mandalay Couture." Sophia smiled, allowing herself a rare moment of satisfaction. "Thank you. I hope we can bring the brand back to its former glory, and then some." As they began packing up, Bianca stormed in, her face contorted with outrage. "You can't just come in here and take over," she hissed at Sophia, ignoring the others. "I built trust with these people. I introduced them to valuable clients. My relationships are what kept them afloat until now. And you think you can just wave your pen around and own it all?" Sophia squared her shoulders. "I'm not taking anything away from you, Bianca. This deal was made to save Mandalay. If you've truly contributed, you have nothing to fear." Bianca's eyes blazed. "I won't let you humiliate me." Sophia held her gaze, calm as still water. "I'm not the one who humiliated you, but I remember how you treated me. I remember you mocking my clothes, my pregnancy. So let's be clear, I won't be bullied again, ever." With that, Sophia turned on her heel, signing documents in hand, surrounded by her team. Bianca stood there, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms, watching as the pregnant wife she once scorned walked away now, the owner of the very company Bianca thought would be her ticket to success. Within days of the acquisition, radical changes swept through Mandalay Couture. Sophia wasted no time implementing her vision. The expensive, rarely profitable lines were scaled back, while a new emphasis was placed on practical yet stylish maternity pieces inspired by Amelia and Company's best sellers. Some of Mandalay's long-standing employees grumbled, initially fearful of losing the luxury reputation, but many also recognized the brand needed a drastic shift to survive. The tension between Sofia and Bianca became an open secret. Bianca's role as a consultant depended on the board's decision, which was now heavily influenced by Sofia. Some expected Sofia to fire Bianca on the spot, but she didn't. Whether it was out of caution, strategy, or a desire to demonstrate fairness, she let Bianca stay on a short-term contract. Bianca was tasked with forging partnerships with high-end clients and leveraging her influencer connections. Despite her personal animosity, Bianca was, after all, well connected within certain circles. Yet Bianca's resentment festered. She maneuvered behind the scenes, whispering to top designers and potential investors that Sofia's changes would degrade the Mandely name. She even met with Henry a few times, claiming she wanted to smooth things over. Henry, intrigued by potential new deals but still harboring guilt about the past, agreed to these meetings more out of curiosity than loyalty to Bianca. Little did he know that Bianca's plan was to exploit any lingering tensions to her advantage. Meanwhile, Sofia thrived under pressure, driven by a deep desire to prove herself. Sales from the combined brand, rebranded as Mandely by Amelia and Company, soared. New lines launched, featuring an array of sizes, fabrics and silhouettes, all designed to celebrate the beauty of motherhood. Influencers began posting about the brand on Instagram, praising the comfortable yet stylish pieces. Even a few celebrities like the actress Emily Blunt, known for championing motherhood and women in film, were photographed wearing the line, generating a flood of media coverage. One afternoon, Caroline Hart asked Sofia to join a roundtable discussion featuring prominent women in the fashion industry, including real-life heavyweights like Tory Burch and Rebecca Minkoff. This event, a highlight during Los Angeles Fashion Week, would give Sofia a massive platform to share her brand's mission. Overwhelmed by the opportunity, Sofia prepared meticulously, crafting talking points about her journey from elementary school teacher to fashion entrepreneur. The event turned out to be a triumph. Sofia spoke passionately about motherhood, inclusivity, and the importance of accessible design. The audience was rapt. Industry insiders took notice. By the end of the discussion, it was clear that the Mandely Amelia and Company merger was forging a new path in maternity fashion, one that even the skeptics now had to respect. Amid the applause, Sofia caught a glimpse of Bianca lurking in the crowd, her expression unreadable. That night, while tucking Amelia into bed, Sofia felt an unshakable sense of foreboding. Success always came with enemies. She knew Bianca was still seething, and Henry's divided loyalties could be a ticking time bomb. Yet, for the moment, she let herself celebrate. She'd built something no one could mock as cheap or unworthy. She had faced down public humiliation, heartbreak, and betrayal, and now stood on a stage beside established industry names. The future felt wide open, but the final reckoning was still ahead, and it would be more dramatic than Sofia could ever anticipate. In a matter of months, Mandely by Amelia and Company skyrocketed to mainstream popularity, smashing quarterly revenue targets and garnering accolades from both business journals and fashion critics. Suddenly, Henry found himself overshadowed by his wife's meteoric rise. His own tech startup had hit a rough patch, losing a major investor to a competitor. Meanwhile, Bianca's manipulations behind the scenes proved fruitless. Employees at Mandely respected Sofia's authentic leadership, and many found Bianca's tactics distasteful. Desperate, Bianca tried one last ploy. She leaked rumors to fashion blogs that Sofia was exploiting pregnant women for profit, and that the brand's so-called affordable prices still had high markups. The rumor caused a brief stir, but Sofia addressed it head-on with full transparency about the brand's manufacturing costs and fair labor practices. With that, Bianca's credibility plummeted. Faced with the undeniable success of the new lines, the board didn't renew her contract. She was effectively exiled from the company she'd hoped to claim as her domain. A week later, Henry's tech startup collapsed. Unable to secure emergency funding, he faced a personal financial crisis and turned to Sophia in a last-ditch plea for help. "Soph, I know things have been horrible between us," he said, his voice trembling with humiliation, "but I'm broke. I can't pay my own bills. Can you lend me some money until I get back on my feet?" Sophia regarded him with a mixture of pity and detachment. Once, she would have done anything to save him her husband, the father of her child, but that was before the betrayal. She'd grown into a woman who understood her worth. "I'll make sure Amelia's needs are always met. But as for bailing you out personally, I'm sorry, Henry. I have to think about what's best for my daughter and myself." Shattered, Henry could only nod. He moved into a friend's spare room, leaving the home to Sophia and Amelia. Over time, he'd realize how profoundly he'd underestimated her strength and how his betrayal had sown the seeds of his own downfall. As for Bianca, she found herself blacklisted in many of the same circles where she once flaunted her status. Word spread of her underhanded attempts to sabotage Sophia, and potential clients were hesitant to associate with someone so toxic. In a twist of fate, Bianca ended up wearing off-brand dresses, living in a smaller apartment, and posting fewer Instagram updates, her once lavish world reduced to echoes of what it had been. Sophia, on the other hand, moved forward with grace. She expanded Mandalay by Amelia and Company internationally, striking deals in Europe and Asia. Celebrities praised the brand's commitment to comfort and style. Caroline Hart was inundated with interview requests for Sophia, who had become an inspiring figure, proof that resilience and empathy could triumph over malice. One sunny afternoon, Sophia found herself at a major fashion event in Paris, walking through a gallery of designs inspired by motherhood. As she toured the exhibit, she recalled that moment years ago, standing humiliated in a cheap maternity dress while Bianca laughed at her. A wave of gratitude washed over her, gratitude for the journey, for the lessons learned, and for the karma that had come full circle. She glanced down at her phone, where a photo of Amelia, now a bubbly toddler, flashed on the screen. She smiled. The story that began with heartbreak had transformed into a powerful message. No one has the right to mock another's struggles, and sometimes the sweetest form of justice is simply living out your dreams. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling the Parisian air. The past was behind her: Henry's betrayal, Bianca's ridicule, the sleepless nights of doubt. Here, in the City of Lights, she stood as the CEO of a flourishing fashion empire, a devoted mother, and a woman who had reclaimed her dignity. The karma was complete. Thank you for joining us on this dramatic journey of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. Sophia's story reminds us that what appears as a crushing defeat can become the catalyst for our greatest triumph. From enduring the scorn of a callous mistress to owning the very fashion house that once sneered at her, Sophia showed us the power of quiet determination. Her evolution from a humiliated wife to a formidable CEO proves that karma never forgets. If this story moved you, be sure to hit that like button and share it with your friends who appreciate a real-life tale of sweet, sweet revenge. And if you want to keep up with more incredible stories just like this, subscribe to our channel so you never miss a single twist or turn. Your support keeps these captivating narratives coming, so thank you for watching and see you in our next video.
They say money can buy anything except anonymity from the internet. One crisp summer morning, billionaire industrialist David Harrington thought he'd scored the perfect getaway with a bewitching companion half his age. Sunlit waves shimmered behind them in an Instagram post he never dreamed would shatter his life. Within hours, a fiery storm of comments erupted accusing the mysterious woman of being someone far more dangerous than she appeared. The rumors spiraled into a full-blown exposé that threatened not just David's crumbling marriage, but also his image and legacy. In a single click, the world learned that secrets, no matter how well funded, rarely remain buried. David Harrington had always been a man who commanded attention the instant he walked into a room. At 6 feet 2 inches, with tailored suits that seemed to drape his athletic frame flawlessly, he radiated a polished self-assurance cultivated over decades of hard work and strategic gambles. Born in Chicago to a middle-class family, David displayed an early flair for numbers and negotiation. By the time he was in college, he'd already built 2 small businesses, one reselling refurbished laptops out of his dorm, and another importing artisanal leather wallets from Italy. He was a hustler in the best sense of the word, unrelenting in his pursuit of prosperity. When he turned 25, David took his biggest risk yet. He convinced an angel investor named Richard Carmichael, a man revered for his savvy in emerging markets, to pour $500,000 into a software automation startup David co-founded. It was an audacious move, especially in a market saturated with bigger, more established players. But David's persuasion worked. Within 18 months, the startup was acquired by a larger tech conglomerate, netting David his first major fortune. It was the start of an illustrious career that would see him founding or funding a series of successful ventures into technology, real estate, and even renewable energy. By his mid-30s, David Harrington was wealthy beyond imagination, yet his ambition burned brighter. He was rarely satisfied. Gone were the days of renting modest apartments and living on fast food. He now presided over a sprawling empire, complete with offices in New York, London, Singapore, and Sao Paulo. He jetted around the globe for business deals, indulging in the high-life trappings, private yachts membership at exclusive clubs, and a mansion perched atop the Hollywood Hills with a ski-line view that glittered like diamonds at night. But hidden beneath the aura of success was a restless void. He was married, yes, to the beautiful and accomplished Sarah Whitmore. They met at a charity event in Los Angeles, bonding over a shared passion for philanthropy. Sarah, an Ivy League-educated lawyer turned environmental activist, had grown up in a similarly middle-class background. She understood David's drive and matched him in intellect. For a while they seemed the ultimate power couple, publicly philanthropic, privately fierce in their love and ambitions. However, time and relentless pursuit of more money placed stress cracks in their marriage. David's constant travel, late-night negotiations, and if rumors were to be believed, unstoppable appetite for new experiences, all weighed heavily on Sarah. As David's orbit expanded, she found herself increasingly sidelined, overshadowed by the gravitational pull of his ambitions. Even the philanthropic causes they once championed together were neglected. David wrote the checks, but rarely bothered to attend the galas or volunteer events anymore. By the time he was in his early 40s, the heart of their relationship had eroded, replaced by polite tolerance and carefully orchestrated public appearances. That was the environment in which David would eventually make a series of decisions, culminating in the scandal that would rock his world. Fueled by ego and weary of the stale comfort his marriage had devolved into, he sought excitement elsewhere. He believed he was untouchable, convinced his well-oiled team of advisors and the iron curtain of wealth could conceal any indiscretions. But David Harrington was about to learn one of life's harshest truths in the digital era. Every secret has a lifespan. All it takes is a single post for an empire's pristine facade to come crashing down. Sarah Whitmore Harrington was no stranger to adversity. Raised by a single mother in a modest Chicago neighborhood, she thrived academically, eventually securing a full scholarship to Columbia University. While her classmates carried designer purses and took spring breaks in Europe, Sarah juggled part-time jobs at coffee shops and university libraries. She took pride in her self-reliance, never shying away from hard work and rigorous study. By her mid-20s, Sarah was practicing corporate law at a prestigious Manhattan firm. She was brilliant, resilient, and notably empathetic. Those qualities caught the attention of an internal pro bono committee, which led her to champion several environmental cases against big corporations. Her compassion for the underdog and her deep sense of justice made her a formidable foe in legal negotiations. She even won a high-profile lawsuit that forced a major chemical company to pay millions in damages to a marginalized community. The victory made headlines, and from that moment, Sarah became recognized not just as a skilled lawyer, but as a warrior for ethical responsibility. That was how she met David at a black tie fundraiser in Los Angeles, where he presented a sizable check to the environmental organization she represented. The sparks flew instantly. In him, she saw a titan with an innate gift for making money, and an equally fervent philanthropic side, an individual who could potentially reshape industries for the better. In her, he saw a steadfast spirit, beautiful both inside and out, and a partner whose intellect could match his. Their courtship was whirlwind. They dined at Michelin-starred restaurants, attended exclusive events, and traveled abroad to meet potential charity partners in places like Nairobi and Mumbai. Within 6 months, they were married in a lavish beach ceremony in Maui, complete with dignitaries, celebrities, and the who's who of venture capital in attendance. However, the transition from newlyweds to a stable marriage was rocky. David's businesses, spread across multiple sectors, demanded constant attention and travel. Meanwhile, Sarah transitioned from corporate law to running her own not-for-profit legal consultancy for environmental issues, an endeavor that required significant energy and focus. They saw each other less and less. The times they did manage to reconnect were overshadowed by David's phone calls, emails, and text notifications. Despite the cracks in their relationship, Sarah believed she still knew David better than anyone else. She sensed when he was exhausted, recognized when his bravado was merely a cover for deeper anxieties. She also recognized as his success soared to new heights that he was falling into certain patterns, seeking novelty, losing interest in things that once mattered, constantly pushing boundaries. But she never quite dared to voice her growing suspicions. She wanted to preserve their public image, and more critically, she didn't want to face the reality that her husband might be cheating. Then the subtle shifts started. David became secretive about his phone, quickly changing screens when she walked by. He started going on business trips to places that made no sense, or at times that were uncharacteristic for the industries he worked in. Once Sarah found a diamond bracelet in his study desk, one that was clearly not for her, as she had never once expressed interest in that style, nor had he gifted her something similar in years. She brushed it off, attributing it to a possible gift for a female investor or sponsor. But deep down, she suspected. Sarah thought about confronting him multiple times, yet her pride held her back. In her mind, relationships were built on honesty and trust, but confronting David without proof felt like a betrayal of her self-respect. She wanted certainty. She needed to be sure. In the quiet corners of her soul, she wondered if it might be easier to look away, to focus on her philanthropic work, and to let David chase his illusions. After all, they maintained a semblance of stability, They weren't short on money. Her beloved mother was comfortable living in a gorgeous townhouse that Sarah and David financed. On the surface, her life seemed perfect. But as the months rolled on, Sarah felt a gathering storm, an anxiety that gnawed at her. Something in her marriage and David was shifting. For all her accomplishments, for all her unwavering character, she was powerless to stop whatever was happening. A sense of impending disaster loomed. She could almost hear the faint thunderclap on the horizon. She just didn't know how or when it would strike, only that it was coming, and when it did, it would change everything. David Harrington first laid eyes on Layla St. James at a private art exhibit in Soho. The event was one of those exclusive gatherings of the ultra-wealthy and avant-garde, a place to see and be seen. She stood in front of a painting, a swirl of neon colors, something abstract and disorienting, and seemed lost in thought. She wore a simple yet elegant emerald green dress, her tawny hair falling in loose waves down her back. David was immediately intrigued by her aura of quiet confidence. He approached her fully expecting that easy spark he often found in conversations. Layla, however, surprised him. She greeted him with polite warmth, but spoke with a self-assuredness and intellectual depth that caught him off guard. She was not overly impressed by his status or money. At least she didn't show it in the usual fawning way. Instead, she asked him questions about his philanthropic endeavors, referencing a literacy program in Southeast Asia that David's foundation had once funded. Few people outside his close circle even knew about that. It was an obscure project, overshadowed by his more flashy contributions. Fascinated by her knowledge, he pressed further. Layla revealed she was an art historian by training, had worked in Europe's auction circuit, and recently moved to New York to pursue her own gallery aspirations. She claimed she had grown tired of the pretentiousness in traditional art circles and wanted to start a space that embraced both established and emerging artists. Over a cocktail in the exhibit's VIP lounge, Layla recounted travel stories from her time in Paris, how she'd negotiated million-dollar deals for rare impressionist works. Her voice dripped with a delicate, almost musical accent. David couldn't quite place a mix, she said, from traveling around the world. In the weeks that followed, they exchanged numbers. David found himself texting Layla at odd hours discussing art-world politics and eventually drifting into flirtation. Layla reciprocated, sprinkling their conversations with subtle compliments and innuendo that kept David on his toes. It felt like a dance one that David had not experienced in a long time. Sarah had once been his intellectual equal, but now their discussions were overshadowed by property deals, lawsuits, and superficial gatherings. Layla offered something new, something fresh. Their first real date came under the guise of a business meeting at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Midtown. David told himself he was merely exploring philanthropic collaboration, maybe funding an art initiative Layla had proposed. But by dessert, they were lost in each other's eyes. A wave of guilt threatened to crash over David, but he quelled it with a glass of Chateau Lafite Rothschild, rationalizing that he deserved happiness. Life was too short, and he had worked too hard. If he couldn't indulge once in a while, what was the point of all this success? Days turned into weeks, and he found every excuse to see Layla. A hotel suite at the Pierre, a weekend in the Hamptons. David claimed he had an urgent real estate matter to attend to. Layla was always there, radiant, engaging, confident in her allure. But there was something else about her, a certain mystery that David couldn't pinpoint. She rarely spoke about her family or past relationships. She was cagey whenever he asked about the specifics of her work in Europe. His curiosity was piqued, but the thrill of their clandestine encounters overshadowed any red flags. In private moments, Layla would talk about the future, teasing a world where they might be more public in their romance. David smiled, uncertain if he could ever cross that line. He was still tethered by a marriage that he had not fully admitted was over. Yet Layla's world was intoxicating and like a moth drawn to flame. He ignored the risk. The more David's desire grew, the more brazen he became about their affair. Eventually, a reckless idea took shape in his mind. He had a beachside villa in Belize that was rarely used. Perhaps a little tropical escape was just what they needed. Sun, sand, and secrecy far from prying eyes. Layla loved the idea, squealing with excitement at the notion of turquoise waters and private cabanas. They decided on a date, making hush-hush travel plans through David's private jet. In David's mind, this was a contained fantasy, a secret paradise sealed away from the rest of his life. No one would ever know. They would be safe to indulge, if only for a few days. He should have remembered that secrets don't stay buried forever. And with social media's insatiable appetite for drama, a single misstep could set off a chain reaction he'd never see coming. The villa in Belize was a pristine haven surrounded by palm trees, with a private stretch of powdery white sand extending into azure waters. It was the kind of place people only see in glossy travel magazines, one David rarely got to enjoy, thanks to his busy schedule. Layla's eyes sparkled when they arrived. She ran to the ocean's edge, letting the warm waves lap at her feet. David watched her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Somewhere in the recesses of his conscience, a small voice asked, "Is this worth it?" He silenced it, enticed by the vision of Layla on the beach. Each morning they lounged under canopied daybeds, sipping tropical cocktails and listening to the rhythmic crash of waves. David felt more alive than he had in years. He indulged in Layla's laughter, her spontaneous dances in the sand, the ways she made him forget about corporate boardrooms and stifling responsibilities. This was freedom, no obligations, no routine, just the two of them enjoying life's simple pleasures. On the second day, after a lazy breakfast of fresh mangoes and coffee, Layla teased David with a challenge. "Let's take a picture, something special to remember this trip by." David hesitated. He had always maintained a strict no social media posts policy when it came to his private affairs. But the sunlight was dancing off the ocean, and Layla looked radiant in her turquoise bikini. She draped herself across a beach lounger, beckoning him closer. David relented, pulling out his phone. He snapped a few pictures of them together. Layla's head on his chest, the glimmering ocean behind them. Laughing, they flipped through the shots, choosing their favorites. Layla posted a couple of photos on her own discreet account set to private. She had only a handful of followers, mostly art world acquaintances, she said. David shrugged, telling himself that a handful of people with no ties to his life wouldn't make a difference. Still, he felt a pang of anxiety at the possibility of any slip. Emboldened by the day's carefree vibe, David grew reckless. Late that evening, after a lavish dinner prepared by the villa's private chef, Layla pressed herself against him and giggled. "Let's show off just a bit. Let's make them jealous." She grabbed his phone and teased him with an Instagram story post. "Just a quick shot of the sunset," she said, with a silhouette of them toasting wine glasses. She promised it wouldn't give away too much. "No faces, no location tags," she whispered. Caught up in the evening's romantic intoxication, David acquiesced. He posted it. The immediate response from his followers was mild. People admired the sunset, the luxurious atmosphere. But within minutes, eagle-eyed fans began to notice small details, the shape of a woman's figure in the reflection of the glass door, the second wine glass in David's hand. A few commented, enjoying a romantic getaway. David, others posted heart emojis and asked, "Where's Sarah?" That was the first red flag. David ignored it, telling himself it was harmless speculation. The next morning, in a haze of euphoria, David made a grave mistake. While Layla was frolicking in the waves, he snapped a candid shot of her, capturing her face in profile, then posted it to his main feed with a cryptic caption, "A moment of peace in paradise." He truly believed it was ambiguous enough that no one would identify her. He never tagged her account, never mentioned her name. But the internet has a way of connecting the dots. Within minutes, the post garnered thousands of likes. Then came the comments, some supportive, many curious, a few, laced with suspicion. A handful of David's close friends texted him directly. "Who is she?" Some used winking emojis, half joking. Others were more direct, worried that this could blow back on him if Sarah saw it. Unperturbed, David turned off his phone notifications, wanting to stay in their bubble of paradise a little while longer. It was on the final day of their trip that reality began to intrude. Unbeknownst to David, a tabloid blogger had recognized Layla's face from a rumor that had circulated in certain high society circles, an art dealer with a dubious past, rumored to seduce wealthy clients, rumored to have left Europe under a cloud of scandal. The blogger had ties to gossip circles across the globe and had access to hush-hush sources in the European art scene. By the time David and Layla boarded his private jet for the return flight to New York, the blogger was already working on an exposé cross-referencing images and combing through digital footprints. The seeds of disaster were planted, and neither David nor Layla had any clue that a social media storm was brewing. They touched down in New York that evening, stepping back into a world that would soon turn on them with alarming speed. For David, the beach vacation was a blissful memory. For the internet, it became the catalyst for a scandal that would reshape everything he thought he knew about his mistress, his marriage, and even himself. When David checked his phone after landing, he noticed a barrage of missed calls and frantic texts, primarily from his closest business associates and his public relations officer, Jacqueline Nguyen. His heart pounded as he glanced at the notifications. Typically, such a flurry of calls indicated a major development, a collapsed deal, maybe a crisis in one of his overseas offices. But as he skimmed through them, he realized the panic was personal, not professional. "David, call me ASAP." One text from Jacqueline read, "We have a problem on Instagram." Confused and apprehensive, he dialed Jacqueline's number. She picked up immediately, her voice strained. "David, you need to delete that post right now," she blurted before he could speak. "Calm down, Jackie." He attempted trying to maintain composure. "What's going on?" She launched into a rapid-fire explanation. "Your post with that woman on the beach." Someone recognized her. Comments are exploding. There's a rumor swirling that she's a con artist who allegedly scammed an art collector in Paris. People are sharing screenshots, old articles, everything. It's going viral. They're calling her the art world grifter. This is beyond just an affair rumor. This could turn into a full-blown scandal. David's head spun. He had braced himself for gossip about a potential mistress, but allegations of criminal activity took the situation to an entirely different level. He ended the call immediately, opened Instagram, and gaped at the flood of comments. Many asked, "Is that Layla St. James?" Others claimed she was wanted for questioning in Europe. Some linked to half-baked investigative pieces from obscure blogs. And then there were the moral judgments, David Harrington. How could you cheat on your wife with a criminal respect lost? Hypocrite. A real philanthropist wouldn't be with a con artist. Layla, who was seated beside him in his chauffeured car, scrolled through her own phone. He could see the color drain from her face. "David, we need to talk," she whispered, voice shaky. Not willing to address the situation in the car, he texted his driver to head to one of his discreet penthouse properties in Manhattan. He couldn't go home to his mansion. Sarah was likely there, and a confrontation now would be disastrous. Layla's expression was that of panic fused with indignation. "I don't understand why they're saying these things," she kept muttering. "I'm not a criminal." She tried to show him what she claimed were legitimate references from her past employers, though David barely glanced at them. Once they arrived at the penthouse, a sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, Layla collapsed onto a plush sofa. David paced phone in hand, reading through messages from colleagues, PR consultants, and even lawyers. His empire was built on a carefully curated image of competence and ethics. Any hint of scandal could harm investor confidence. And the fact that Sarah, widely respected in legal and philanthropic circles, might soon find out, was another ticking bomb. "I need you to tell me everything," David demanded, voice taut with urgency. "Why are people calling you a grifter? Were you accused of something in Europe? Tell me now, Layla." She exhaled, trembling. "I never scammed anyone. I was involved with a wealthy French collector. Yes, but I left because he was controlling and abusive. He spread rumors about me to cover his tracks. I never faced any charges. None of it is true." David studied her, trying to gauge the sincerity of her words. He had believed her wholeheartedly until this moment, but now his instincts sounded alarms. Something in her eyes. Was it fear, or was it guilt? The swirling chaos of the moment made it hard to read. A sense of betrayal and dread took hold of him. He realized that even if Layla was innocent, the public didn't care. Gossip and scandal had already latched onto them. The internet feeds on controversy, and they had served it up on a silver platter. The damage might already be done. Over the next few hours, David's crisis management team mobilized. He engaged his top-notch legal counsel, pressing them to craft a statement denying any criminal association. Jacqueline orchestrated a digital damage control strategy, locking down comments, removing the offending post, and issuing official disclaimers that any claims about Layla's criminal background were unsubstantiated rumors. But the internet had already taken screenshots. The post lived on in countless retweets and reshares. Worse still, the mainstream media was picking it up now. A celebrity gossip show ran a segment featuring the blurred-out images of David and Layla on the beach with a dramatic voiceover billionaire, David Harrington's rumored mistress, international con artist, or misunderstood muse. Speculative headlines mushroomed across tabloids, often accompanied by pictures of Sarah, his wronged wife, looking stoic and poised at past charity events. On top of everything, phone calls from Sarah began lighting up David's screen. He couldn't bring himself to answer. His mind whirled in panic, trying to figure out how to spin this. He composed text after text to Sarah, erasing them before sending any. There was no easy way to explain. Perhaps the best he could do was beg for her forgiveness and attempt some sort of damage limitation. David, Layla said softly, breaking the tense silence. "I need you to believe me. I'm not who they say I am." He looked at her, swallowing the lump in his throat. "We'll figure this out." He managed, though he wasn't sure he believed his own words. But the question that truly haunted him was, had he been duped? And if so, was it just by a cunning seductress, or also by his own naive desire for excitement and novelty? The answer wouldn't remain hidden for long. The internet had taken hold of this scandal, and soon even darker revelations would surface, forcing David to confront secrets far more devastating than an affair. While David and Layla tried to contain the inferno in Manhattan, Sarah Harrington was at home, feeling as though the ground had opened beneath her feet. Initially, she had ignored the handful of texts from friends, hinting at David's suspicious Instagram post. She was used to rumors. But then her best friend, Monica Alvarez, sent a message that rattled her. "Please check the tabloids." "I'm so sorry, Sarah." With shaky hands, Sarah clicked a link Monica had forwarded. She saw David's Instagram post, the silhouette of a woman on a beach, and the avalanche of salacious comments and allegations. Her first reaction was numbness, an eerie calm that spread through her limbs. She had suspected David might be unfaithful, but seeing it unfold publicly was a different kind of pain. An hour later, her phone buzzed again. It was her mother, distressed and confused about the swirling rumors. Embarrassment flooded Sarah, a hot flush crawling up her cheeks. She assured her mother she was fine, even though her heart felt as if it were cracking in half. She forced herself to remain steady, telling her mother not to believe everything she read online. But the numbness soon gave way to anger, then heartbreak, then an odd sense of relief. At least now the rumors were in the open. No more doubts, no more illusions. She spent the next few hours pacing the living room, rereading old messages from David, analyzing their marriage from every angle. She felt a mixture of betrayal and odd detachment, as though she were hovering above herself, watching it all unfold from a distance. A short while later, David's chauffeur arrived at the mansion, dropping off a large black envelope. Sarah took it, opened it, and found legal documents inside, some half-baked statements from David's attorneys, disclaimers about the alleged mistress's background, and an apologetic note that ended with, "Please do not speak to the press. I will explain everything." There was no real apology, no admission of guilt. Just corporate-sounding instructions. It was like receiving a memo from a CEO to a subordinate, rather than a heartfelt message from a husband to his wife. Furious, she called David multiple times, but each attempt went to voicemail. She left a single message. "You owe me an explanation. David, I'm not some PR problem to be handled." Then she hung up, refusing to try again. That evening, as she attempted to navigate the swirling confusion, she received another unexpected visitor. Michael Whitmore, her cousin and fellow attorney, who also worked for a prestigious Los Angeles firm. Michael was in New York on business and had seen the online furore. He arrived unannounced, a supportive presence Sarah desperately needed. They sat in the living room, the mansion feeling too large, too grand for the gloom enveloping it. Sarah poured them both glasses of wine, her hands trembling ever so slightly. She recounted the situation, her suspicions, the damning Instagram post, the rumors about the mistress's criminal past. She felt exposed, humiliated. Michael listened patiently, asking pointed questions. "So this woman Layla might be a con artist," he said, swirling the wine in his glass. "Do we know if it's true?" Sarah shrugged. "I don't know anything anymore. I thought I knew David, but now I'm not so sure." Michael offered a thoughtful nod. "Look, Sarah, I can help you. Legally. We can figure out your options, whether it's a separation, a divorce, or simply negotiations for your protection. You shouldn't trust his attorneys. They'll protect him first." Sarah sighed, leaning back into the sofa's cushions. "I appreciate that, but I need time to think." My marriage is on the line, and if this woman really is dangerous, I don't want to rush into any decisions I'll regret. Michael placed his hand over hers. I understand. But be cautious. Men like David with power and money can become unpredictable under pressure. Do what you must to protect yourself emotionally, legally, financially. That night, Sarah tried to sleep, but nightmares plagued her images of David and Layla on a beach swirling tabloids and faceless gossipers pointing fingers at her. The next morning, she decided she wouldn't be silent. If David wouldn't provide clarity, she would find it on her own. She scheduled a meeting with her own legal advisors, ignoring the suggestion in David's letter to remain quiet. She reached out to her charitable partners, confirming that she would continue her activism work, regardless of the scandal. The last thing she needed was for her philanthropic efforts to be overshadowed by her husband's affair. Amid the emotional turmoil, a flicker of her old resolve appeared. Sarah refused to let David's betrayal define her. If anything, it fortified her determination. If the woman in the scandal truly was a con artist, Sarah intended to expose the lies. And if the rumors were false, she would force David to explain why he had put her through this mortifying ordeal. From that point on, Sarah began her own quiet investigation. Friends in the art world, acquaintances in legal networks across Europe, she reached out to anyone who might have a lead on Layla St. James. She had no illusions that discovering the truth would fix her marriage, but at least she wouldn't be a passive spectator to her own humiliation. Little did she know her search for answers would set off the next wave of revelations, drawing her into a labyrinth of secrets deeper and more twisted than she could have ever imagined. Back at David's penthouse, tension hung in the air like a stagnant fog. Layla paced the living room, her phone constantly buzzing with text messages and calls. She ignored most, focusing instead on David, who was huddled over his laptop in a makeshift war room arrangement with his PR team via video conference. The official statements they had released weren't silencing the rumors. If anything, the chatter online seemed to grow louder, especially on niche art world forums. Jacqueline's voice crackled through the laptop speakers. David, we have to address these allegations head-on. We found some references to Layla's possible involvement with a French collector named Jean-Louis Moreau. He's rumored to have lost a significant sum purchasing forgeries from an unknown intermediary, someone described as an attractive American woman. Some people are linking that story to Layla. We need to refute this or confirm it. Refute it. Layla interjected, indignation flaring in her eyes. It's a smear campaign by a bitter ex. I've told David this already. David sighed. Do we have any evidence that you didn't do these things? Layla. Something official. Legal documents proving your innocence. She glowered, crossing her arms. I never faced formal charges. That's all the proof I have. Jacqueline's voice softened. That's not enough for the court of public opinion. They want something concrete. With a heavy sigh, David ended the call, promising to regroup later. He turned to face Layla, who was hugging herself defensively. I need the truth, he said quietly. I'm not accusing you, but if there's any detail you left out, I need to know. Her eyes flickered. Then she told him her story. Layla claimed she had indeed worked with Jean-Louis Moreau, one of France's most influential collectors, who hired her to help him scout and acquire valuable pieces. According to Layla, Jean-Louis was arrogant and manipulative, eventually pressuring her into a toxic affair. As she tried to distance herself professionally and personally, Jean-Louis began to sabotage her reputation, planting rumors of forgery and fraud. Layla insisted she had zero involvement in any wrongdoing and fled Europe after receiving threats from Jean-Louis's associates. She'd been attempting to rebuild her life in New York, severing all ties with that dark chapter. David listened, half wanting to believe her. The story was plausible enough. Rich men had used their influence to destroy someone's reputation before. But a nagging doubt remained. Layla was still omitting details. "What about the rumors you drugged him and stole money?" David asked, referencing a particularly sensational claim circulating online. Her cheeks reddened. Utter lies. Fabricated. "I don't do drugs. I hardly even drink. I've never stolen a cent from anyone in my life. Don't you see, he's punishing me because I left him." David studied her trembling lip, the tears welling in her eyes. He wanted to comfort her, to accept her story at face value. But the stakes were too high. His empire was in jeopardy, and if Layla was hiding something, the fallout could be catastrophic. Yet the thought of losing her, the excitement she brought into his life, filled him with dread. So he decided to proceed cautiously, choosing to believe her for the moment, but resolved to do his own thorough checks. He called in favors from private investigators he had used in corporate deals. Within hours, they began scouring European legal records, court documents, and any traces of Layla's past, all while David prepared for the next wave of media scrutiny. The scandal showed no signs of abating. Then, in a surprising twist, David's phone rang with a call from none other than Jean-Louis Moreau himself. A few months prior, David had made casual acquaintance with Moreau at a Monaco charity event. Now the French collector was reaching out directly, presumably, to discuss the fiasco. With Layla fidgeting nervously nearby, David accepted the call. On speaker, Jean-Louis's accented voice flowed smoothly. "Ah, Monsieur Harrington. I see we have a common acquaintance." David cleared his throat. "Apparently so. I'd like to get to the bottom of this. You're aware of the rumors?" A condescending chuckle crackled over the speaker. "Rumors, yes. But they are not rumors, monsieur. The woman you call Layla St. James, if that's her real name, defrauded me. She introduced me to forged artwork, manipulated me emotionally, then disappeared with large commissions. I have evidence. I attempted legal action, but she slipped away." Layla blanched, shaking her head vehemently at David. David pressed. "She claims you invented these lies because she ended a personal relationship with you." A harsh laugh erupted from Jean-Louis. "Personal relationship? She seduced me for one purpose, to gain access to my network and my finances. I warn you, Harrington, this is a dangerous woman. She is skilled at deception. If you continue to involve yourself with her, your name, your empire, both will burn." The call ended abruptly. Layla broke into tears, insisting Jean-Louis was lying, that he was the manipulator. David stood there, torn. On one hand, he despised Jean-Louis's smug tone and recognized how men of power often rewrite history to blame women. On the other, the man's conviction was chilling. Could it all be true? David's private investigators would soon deliver a preliminary report, but the emotional stakes were skyrocketing. If Layla was innocent, David would stand by her. If she was guilty, he risked his fortune, his reputation, everything. And all the while, Sarah loomed in the background, her silence perhaps more threatening than any media outlet. That night, David slept fitfully, plagued by dreams of forging art and forging love, unable to discern which illusions were real. Little did he know the truth would be more complicated and more shocking than he could ever anticipate. By the following morning, David's investigators had sent a cryptic message. "We have substantial findings. Meeting recommended." He arranged for them to come to the penthouse, carefully scheduling it when Layla would be out. She had departed earlier to clear her head, though David wondered if she was actually meeting someone else. Just after noon, two stoic men in suits arrived, introducing themselves as Morgan Harris and Philip Zhao. David led them into the study, shutting the door behind them. Their expressions were grim. Morgan began. "Mr. Harrington, we've identified two separate legal dockets in Paris and Brussels that involve an American woman with a similar profile to Ms. St. James. The name used was not Layla St. James, but Linda McPherson." Same initials, LM Philip continued. "The charges were dropped in one case and settled out of court in another. Both involved allegations of art fraud and misrepresentation. The documents list an unidentified male accomplice." David leaned forward, his pulse pounding. "Are we sure this is the same woman?" Morgan nodded. "We have a 78% facial recognition match between photos from archived news articles and the images you provided us of Ms. St. James. A strong likelihood it's her." A nauseating dread coursed through David's veins. "Any sign of Jean-Louis Moreau's involvement?" Philip replied. "He's mentioned in the Brussels docket as a complaining witness. The details were sealed, but we suspect a settlement was reached behind closed doors." David sank into his chair, his mind a kaleidoscope of betrayal and rage. He thought of confronting Layla, but a text on his phone interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Unknown number. "If you want to keep certain secrets from your wife and the public, it'll cost you $5 million. Wire instructions to follow." Accompanying the text was a single photograph, a candid shot of David and Layla in an intimate moment on the Belize beach, far more revealing than anything posted on social media. Clearly, someone had been photographing them. The angle suggested a drone or a long-range camera. And now they wanted money. David clenched his jaw. "I'm being blackmailed," he growled, showing Morgan and Philip the text. They exchanged worried looks, cautioning David not to make any hasty moves. This could be linked to Ms. St. James's alleged accomplice, Morgan offered. "We've seen this pattern before." Seething, David dismissed them. He needed a plan. A quiet hush money payment would only encourage more extortion down the line. Yet ignoring the threat could lead to even greater exposure. And the worst part was the growing suspicion that Layla herself might be part of this scheme, another elaborate con. But a flicker of doubt lingered. Perhaps Layla truly was a victim, and her old accomplice was extorting them both. He decided he needed to corner Layla that very evening. No more half-truths or evasion. He wanted her entire story. If she lied or faltered, he'd cut her off and let the legal system do its worst. But if she persuaded him of her innocence, then perhaps, just perhaps, they could face this together. Hours later, Layla returned. David wasted no time. "We need to talk," he said curtly, leading her into the study. She looked apprehensive, eyes darting to the closed door. He showed her the blackmail text and the incriminating photo. He then presented the investigative report, the name Linda McPherson, the out-of-court settlements. With every piece of information, Layla's face paled further. When he finished, an uneasy silence settled. Layla's lips quivered. Then she began to speak, voice trembling. "I'm not Linda McPherson. That was my sister." A new tale spilled forth, each revelation more shocking than the last. Layla insisted she had a twin sister raised separately after a messy divorce in her childhood. The sister was the one who got entangled with Jean-Louis, forging art and leveraging Layla's identity. Layla claimed she tried to help her sister out of the mess, but it spiraled beyond control. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I fled to America to escape that chaos. My sister threatened to drag me down with her. I changed my name legally to distance myself from her record. David, I swear I've never defrauded anyone. I thought you'd never understand, so I kept it hidden. David's mind reeled. The idea of a twin, a doppelganger who could have orchestrated these crimes, sounded outrageous, but not impossible. Layla sobbed, claiming her sister was the blackmailer, the one who had been snapping secret photos and demanding money. She's punishing me for leaving her behind, for not bailing her out again. The story was so elaborate, so twisted. David's gut wrenched with conflicting emotions. The puzzle pieces fit a little too well, yet Layla's tears seemed genuine. He remembered how she had always been vague about her family, how frightened she seemed whenever he asked about her past. Could this all be real? Wrestling with his doubts, David found himself making a decision based on a precarious blend of logic and emotion. If what you're saying is true, we need proof, he said, voice stern. We'll involve my investigators. We'll find your sister, and we'll end this blackmail. Layla nodded, relieved. Whatever it takes. I'll do anything. A fragile truce formed between them that night. David, driven by a potent mix of fear, pride, and infatuation, chose to believe Layla at least temporarily. He vowed to protect her from the blackmailer, from the swirling rumors, from everything. Yet in the darkness of the penthouse, as Layla slept fitfully in the next room, David stared out the window at the glowing city lights, wondering if he'd just made the greatest mistake of his life. While David grappled with the twin sister revelation, Sarah conducted her own inquiry, determined to uncover the truth about Layla St. James. Through her legal network, she managed to contact a renowned French attorney named René Fournier, who had once handled a high-profile art fraud case involving Jean-Louis Moreau. Via a series of lengthy email exchanges, Sarah pieced together a confounding puzzle. According to René, there had indeed been an American woman at the center of the Moreau scandal. Someone who used multiple aliases, among them Linda and Layla. Official documents were sealed, but rumors suggested the woman had an accomplice, possibly a family member. René also hinted that the entire fiasco nearly extended into a broader European crime syndicate. But before any formal charges could stick, the woman vanished. Moreau had enough influence to keep the scandal out of mainstream news, presumably to save face. But the rumor mill churned relentlessly behind closed doors. Sarah's instincts told her that David's mistress had some connection to that case, but she wanted concrete proof. She scrolled through obscure websites, reading half-legible Google translations of French tabloids, looking for any mention of sisters or twins. Then she stumbled on a small blog post from years ago that mentioned a sibling duo suspected of art forgery, one rumored to be involved with Moreau. The post cited no official documents, but the narrative was eerily similar to Layla's story. Frustrated, yet fueled by this partial validation, Sarah pressed further. She reached out to an old law school acquaintance in Brussels, who was now a mid-level judicial clerk. Within a day, the acquaintance confirmed that sealed records existed involving a Linda McPherson, but he couldn't access details without risking his career. He did, however, confirm the mention of a sister in the sealed complaint. Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Layla might indeed have a twin, a partner in crime, or a separate individual entirely. Either possibility spelled trouble for David, and by extension, Sarah. If Layla had roped David into a blackmail scheme, the scandal could destroy his reputation and the philanthropic work Sarah herself cherished. The final piece of the puzzle arrived in an even more unexpected way. Late one afternoon, Sarah received a cryptic text from a number labeled Unknown. Meet me at the Green Leaf Cafe on 5th. I have information about Layla. Come alone. A friend. Wary of a trap. Sarah nearly ignored it, but curiosity and a desire to protect herself compelled her to go. She arrived at the cafe, a cozy, dimly lit space, scanning the patrons nervously. A tall, lean man in a baseball cap stood and waved her over. As she approached, he took off the cap, revealing salt and pepper hair. She recognized him vaguely from a magazine cover, Jean-Louis Moreau. Her heart hammered as she sat down, unsure how to proceed. Moreau spoke first, his English tinged with a delicate accent. Mrs. Harrington, thank you for coming. I apologize for the clandestine approach, but we share a common predicament. She regarded him with cold caution. You claim to have information about Layla St. James. His lips curled into a faint smile. Or Linda McPherson, or whatever she calls herself these days. Sarah's breath caught. So it's true. Moreau leaned in. I contacted your husband, but he seems enamored by her. Or perhaps she's convinced him of a sob story. Either way, he is not receptive. But you, Mrs. Harrington, you have more at stake if this escalates further. He slid an envelope across the table. Sarah opened it to find printed emails, photographs, documents linking Layla to a series of art deals with suspicious authenticity. One photo showed a woman identical to Layla holding hands with a second woman, a near doppelganger. Another picture captured them in front of a Belgian art gallery, rumored to deal in forgeries. The timestamps suggested these were from a few years ago. Proof of her partnership with her twin, who is equally cunning. Moreau explained. They swindled me and they swindled others. I want them both to face justice. But your husband is in the way, blindly protecting her. Sarah felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, bitterness, heartbreak, and a strange sense of vindication. Part of her wanted to lash out at David. Part of her wanted to pity him. She also wondered what Moreau expected from her. Moreau eyed her. I need your help. Influence your husband to break ties with her. If he continues to shield her, she will only drag him further into the mud. And I suspect her sister lurks in the shadows, planning something bigger. Perhaps the blackmail we are hearing about Sarah, swallowed hard. What do you get out of this? His brow furrowed. Closure, justice, and the chance to salvage what's left of my reputation in Europe. Also a certain moral satisfaction in knowing these sisters don't dupe anyone else. They parted ways with a tense handshake. Sarah clutched the envelope as if it were a time bomb. Her marriage had been on the brink of collapse, but this new knowledge gave her a sense of responsibility. She had to warn David, if only to protect him from sinking deeper into a catastrophic scandal. She also felt a measure of compassion. Despite his betrayal, David was still the man she once loved, and no matter how furious she felt, she didn't want him ruined by these manipulations. That night she found herself driving to David's penthouse, not entirely sure how she would approach the subject. The envelope of evidence sat on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. She thought of all the ways this meeting could go. Would David believe her? Would Layla be there, spitting venom at Sarah's intrusion? One thing was certain, the next steps she took could determine the fate of both their futures and possibly save David from the greatest betrayal of his life. Sarah arrived at David's penthouse just after dusk, her nerves taut with urgency. The doorman let her in, without question. As she stepped off the private elevator, she found David pacing the living room phone clutched in hand. He froze when he saw her guilt, relief, and dread flashing across his face. "Sarah," he began. She raised a hand. "I know everything. I'm here to stop you from making a terrible mistake." Without another word, she extended the envelope Jean-Louis Moreau had given her. David took it, flipped through its contents, photographs of Layla and her twin emails, detailing suspicious art deals and banking documents that hinted at blackmail. His face tightened with disbelief. "Where did this come from?" he asked quietly. "From Moreau," Sarah said. "He claims Layla and her sister ran a sophisticated art scam, and now she's entangled you in it." David looked stunned. "Layla told me her sister set her up, that she's the victim here." "She also told you she'd be honest with investigators," Sarah countered. "Did she ever show you this?" She pointed to a photo of Layla and her sister, exchanging a thick envelope, both smiling. Before David could reply, Layla stepped out of a side room. Her hair was tousled, her eyes burning. "You're working with that man, Sarah. That manipulative monster." Sarah didn't flinch. "You've been hiding too much. If you're innocent, prove it. I was trying to protect David." Layla cried. "My sister threatened us both. I didn't plan to fall in love, but I did." Everything changed. Before David could react, Layla's phone buzzed. She paled, then bolted toward her bag. Her belongings spilled across the floor, lipstick's wallet and a folded note. Sarah snatched it up. "Swiss wire transfer instructions," she read aloud. "Is this your sister's next payment?" Layla's defenses crumbled. I was going to handle it. I didn't want David dragged through this. "So you'd rather pay hush money than tell the truth?" Sarah's voice was tight with disgust. David stared at Layla, torn between fury and heartbreak. "You told me we were into this together, but you lied again. I had to." Layla shouted, tears streaming. "I knew if you doubted me, you'd walk away." David's face hardened. "And now I just might." The room fell into tense silence. Then quietly, David picked up his phone. "I'm calling the police," he said, dialing. "Let them figure out who's lying." Layla lunged for the phone, but Sarah stepped in her way. A moment later, the call connected. The decision was made. Sirens approached in the distance. Layla collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Sarah turned away, fighting back tears of her own, of betrayal, loss, and something like pity. The truth would unravel in the days to come. Investigators would trace the blackmail, expose the twins' identity, and sort through Layla's involvement. David's public image would take a hit, but it would survive. Whether his marriage did only time would tell. But for now, the storm outside mirrored the one within, and none of their lives would ever be the same. Betrayal, scandal, and secret identities. This story proves that even the most powerful among us can be undone by hidden truths. In the end, David Harrington learned the hard way that wealth and influence can't shield you from the consequences of deception. Sarah, despite her heartbreak, found renewed strength in confronting the lies head-on rather than remaining a silent victim. As for Layla or Linda, her fate was sealed by the very illusions she spun, reminding us that the truth always finds a way to surface. If you were captivated by the twists, betrayals, and dramatic showdowns in this real-life saga, help us shine more light on stories that need to be told. Like this video, share it with friends who love